The dust kicked up around Helena Sinclair's silk boots as she stepped off the stagecoach in Wickenburg, Arizona territory, and she knew immediately that her father would be furious. She had traveled alone from San Francisco in the spring of 1882. The desert heat pressed against her face like a physical thing, so different from the cool fog of the California coast she had left 3 days prior. Helena lifted her gloved hand to shield her eyes from the merciless sun, searching the crowded Main Street for any sign of her father's carriage. Men in dusty clothes moved past her, some tipping their hats respectfully at the sight of a finely dressed woman, others openly staring at the expensive traveling dress that marked her as someone from money. She felt exposed standing there amid the rough wooden buildings and dirt streets, a silk flower in a garden of thorns. "Miss Sinclair," a gruff voice broke through her thoughts. An older man with a weathered face and a sheriff's badge approached her, his expression apologetic. "I'm Sheriff Thompson. Your father sent me to fetch you. He got held up at the bank dealing with some trouble, asked me to bring you to the hotel and said he would meet you there within the hour." Helena nodded, relieved to at least have someone who knew her name. "Thank you, Sheriff. That's very kind of you." As the sheriff helped load her 3 large trunks onto a small wagon, Helena surveyed the town that would be her home for the next several months. Wickenburg was smaller than she had imagined, a single main street lined with establishments that all looked dusty and temporary, as though they might blow away in the next strong wind. The bank stood at the center of town, a 2-story building that tried to project permanence with its brick construction, but even it seemed to sag under the weight of the Arizona sun. "Your father has done well here," Sheriff Thompson said as they rode the short distance to the hotel. "The bank has grown considerably since he arrived 2 years ago. Half the ranches in the territory do business with him now." "He writes that Arizona has great potential," Helena said, though privately she wondered what had possessed her father to leave the civilized comforts of San Francisco for this harsh frontier. Then again, she knew the answer. Her mother's death 3 years earlier had changed everything. Her father had thrown himself into work, accepting every opportunity that might distract him from his grief. When the position to manage the territorial bank in Wickenburg had been offered, he had accepted without hesitation. Helena had remained in San Francisco, living with her aunt and finishing her education at Miss Porter's Academy for Young Ladies. But now, at 20 years old, she had completed her studies, and her father had insisted she join him. "You're all I have left," his last letter had said. "Please come home to me." Except this was not home. Home was the 3-story house on Nob Hill with its view of the bay. Home was afternoon tea with her mother in the garden. Home was everything this dusty frontier town was not. The hotel was surprisingly well appointed inside, though nothing compared to the establishments she was accustomed to. The proprietor, a thin woman with kind eyes, showed Helena to a suite of rooms on the 2nd floor. "Your father has kept these ready for you for the past month," the woman said. "He has been counting the days until your arrival." Once alone, Helena removed her hat and gloves and moved to the window. From this vantage point, she could see most of the main street and the mountains rising in the distance, purple and imposing against the brilliant blue sky. Below, men moved in and out of the various shops and saloons. A group of cowboys rode past, their horses kicking up dust that hung in the air long after they had passed. One of the cowboys caught her attention. He sat tall in the saddle, his movements confident and easy as he guided his horse to the hitching post in front of the general store. Unlike the others, he dismounted with a grace that suggested he was born on horseback. He wore simple clothes, work-worn denim and a dark shirt, his hat pushed back slightly to reveal sun-bronzed skin and dark hair. Even from a distance, Helena could tell he was young, probably not much older than herself. She watched as he tied his horse with careful attention, running his hand along the animal's neck in a gesture so tender it made something in her chest tighten. There was a gentleness to him that seemed at odds with the rough cowboys she had seen so far. He looked up suddenly, and though she told herself it was impossible at this distance, she felt the moment his eyes found her window. Heat flooded her cheeks and she stepped back quickly, letting the curtain fall into place. What was she doing, staring at strange men in the street like some foolish girl? She had been raised better than that. A knock at the door announced her father's arrival. When she opened it, Charles Sinclair swept her into his arms with a cry of joy that brought tears to her eyes. "Helena, my dear girl, let me look at you." He held her at arm's length, and she saw how the 2 years had aged him. His hair had gone completely gray now, and deep lines bracketed his mouth and eyes. But his smile was genuine, and the love in his expression was unmistakable. "You've become so beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You look so much like your mother." "I've missed you, Father," Helena said, meaning it despite her reservations about this place. They spent the next hour catching up, her father telling her about the bank and the town, the challenges and opportunities of frontier life. He had arranged for her to have these hotel rooms until the house he was building on the edge of town was completed. "Another month, perhaps 2, he said. "I wanted it to be perfect before you saw it, a proper home for you." "I'm sure it will be lovely," Helena said, though she wondered if anywhere in this territory could truly feel like home. "There's a dance at the church hall this Saturday," her father continued. "The whole town will attend. It will be a good opportunity for you to meet people, make some friends. The minister's wife, Mrs. Patterson, has 3 daughters near your age. And there's the school teacher, Miss Webster, who is quite refined despite the circumstances. You won't lack for company, I promise." Helena nodded, though the thought of making friends in this rough place seemed daunting. Still, she would try. For her father's sake, she would try. The next few days passed in a blur of unpacking and settling in. Helena organized her belongings in the hotel rooms, hanging her dresses in the small wardrobe and arranging her books on the bedside table. She took her meals in the hotel dining room, always aware of the curious stares from the other patrons. News of the banker's daughter had clearly spread through town. On Thursday morning, her father suggested she visit the general store to pick up a few items she might need. "It will do you good to walk around town a bit," he said. "Get your bearings. The store owner, Mr. Jenkins, and his wife are good people. They'll treat you fairly." So Helena found herself walking down the wooden sidewalk that fronted the main street, parasol raised against the sun, trying to ignore the attention her presence attracted. She had dressed simply by her standards, in a day dress of blue cotton, but even this marked her as someone of means in a town where most women wore serviceable calico or homespun. The general store was a large building crammed with everything from foodstuffs to farming equipment. Helena entered, grateful for the relative coolness inside. A plump woman behind the counter looked up with a welcoming smile. "You must be Miss Sinclair," the woman said. "I'm Martha Jenkins. Your father said you might stop by. Please take your time looking around. If you need anything, just ask." Helena thanked her and began browsing the shelves. She was examining a selection of writing paper when she heard the bell over the door chime. Footsteps crossed the wooden floor and a man's voice, deep and warm, said, "Morning, Mrs. Jenkins." "Good morning, Zachary," Mrs. Jenkins replied. "I have your order ready. Let me fetch it from the back." Helena glanced up and felt her breath catch. It was the cowboy from the other day, the one she had watched from her window, Up close, he was even more striking than she had realized. He was tall and lean, with broad shoulders and strong hands that he now removed his hat with, revealing thick dark hair slightly disheveled from the wind. His face was all strong lines and angles, weathered by sun and work, but it was his eyes that held her attention. They were deep brown, warm and intelligent, framed by dark lashes that any woman would envy. He noticed her staring, and a slight smile curved his lips. "Morning, miss," he said politely, inclining his head. "Good morning," Helena managed, feeling foolish for her obvious attention. An awkward silence stretched between them. He seemed about to say something more when Mrs. Jenkins returned from the back room carrying a wooden crate. "Here you are, Zachary. That's everything your father ordered. How is he feeling?" "Better, thank you. The medicine Doc Murray prescribed seems to be helping." Zachary moved to take the crate, muscles flexing under his worn shirt as he lifted it easily. "I'm glad to hear it. Give him my best." Zachary nodded, then glanced once more at Helena. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and something passed between them, something Helena could not name but felt in the sudden quickening of her pulse. Then he was gone, the bell chiming as the door closed behind him. "That's Zachary Harris," Mrs. Jenkins said, her tone approving. "One of the finest young men in the territory. He and his father have a ranch about 10 miles north of town. Nothing fancy, but they work hard and they're honest. Zachary brings his father to town once a month for supplies and to see the doctor. His father's health has been failing, sadly." Helena murmured something appropriate, trying to focus on the writing paper again, but her thoughts kept drifting to warm brown eyes and a gentle smile. Saturday arrived with clear skies and temperatures that made Helena grateful for the lighter fabrics she had brought. Her father arrived at her hotel in the early evening, looking distinguished in a dark suit. "You look beautiful, my dear," he said when he saw her in her evening dress of pale green silk. It was one of her simpler gowns, but even so, she suspected it would be far finer than anything else at the dance. The church hall was already crowded when they arrived, filled with families and young people all dressed in their Sunday best. A group of musicians in the corner played fiddle and guitar, and the sound of laughter and conversation filled the space. Helena felt dozens of eyes turned toward her as she entered on her father's arm. "There are the Pattersons," her father said, guiding her toward a family clustered near the refreshment table. "Reverend Patterson and his wife are pillars of this community." The introductions were made, and Helena found herself surrounded by the minister's 3 daughters, all eager to welcome her. Sarah, the eldest at 19, seemed particularly friendly. "We're so glad you're here," she said warmly. "There are so few young women our age in Wickenburg. Most of the families here have small children or grown sons." "I'm pleased to meet you all," Helena said, and meant it. The girls seemed genuine in their welcome, without the catness she had sometimes encountered among society girls in San Francisco. As the evening progressed, Helena was introduced to what seemed like every family in town. The school teacher, Miss Webster, proved to be an interesting woman with sharp intelligence and a dry sense of humor. Several of the local ranchers' wives welcomed her kindly, though she could sense their curiosity about this city girl in their midst. Young men began approaching to request dances, and Helena's father nodded his permission each time. She danced with the blacksmith's son, a lawyer who had recently arrived from Texas, the son of a wealthy ranch owner, and several others whose names blurred together. They were all polite, all respectful, but none of them sparked any real interest in her. She was returning from a particularly tedious dance with a pompous merchant's son when she saw him. Zachary Harris stood near the entrance, looking uncomfortable in clothes that were obviously his Sunday best, but still showed signs of wear and careful mending. He was speaking with another young cowboy, his expression serious. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Helena felt that same inexplicable pull she had experienced in the general store. Without thinking, she smiled. He blinked, surprised, then slowly returned the smile with one of his own that transformed his serious face into something beautiful. "Miss Sinclair." A voice beside her broke the moment. She turned to find a well-dressed young man with slicked back hair and an over-confident expression. "I'm William Bradford. My father owns the Triple B Ranch, largest spread in the territory. May I have this dance?" Helena wanted to refuse, but her father was watching with approval. The Bradfords were clearly important in the community, the kind of family her father would want her to befriend. "Of course," she said with forced politeness. William Bradford was an accomplished dancer. She had to give him that, but he was also arrogant and condescending. He spent the entire dance talking about his family's wealth and his important position as foreman of their ranch. "Of course, I won't be a foreman forever," he said with a laugh. "Once my father retires, I'll inherit the whole operation, one of the richest men in Arizona territory." "How nice for you," Helena said, trying to keep the sarcasm from her voice. "A woman like you understands the importance of position," William continued. "I can see you're refined, educated, not like most of the women around here. You'd appreciate the finer things a man of means could provide." Helena felt her temper rising. "I assure you, Mr. Bradford, I value a person's character far more than their bank account." He laughed as though she had told a joke. Of course, but character doesn't put food on the table or build a fine house, does it?" The dance ended, mercifully, and Helena excused herself quickly, claiming she needed some air. She slipped through the crowd toward the door that led to the small garden behind the church. Outside, the evening air was cooling, and the sounds of the dance were muffled. She breathed deeply, trying to calm her irritation. "I take it William Bradford didn't make a good impression." Helena spun around. Zachary Harris stood a few feet away, leaning against the church wall. In the lamplight spilling from the windows, his expression was amused. "I'm sorry," Helena said, flustered. "I didn't realize anyone else was out here." "I'm the one who should apologize," he said, straightening. "I didn't mean to startle you or eavesdrop. I just needed some air myself. These kinds of things aren't really my comfort zone." "Nor mine, apparently," Helena admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. He moved closer and she caught the scent of soap and leather. "You handled Bradford well, better than he deserved. You know him, unfortunately. His father is a good man, but William is cut from different cloth. He thinks his family's money entitles him to anything he wants, including other people's respect." Zachary's voice held distaste. "Sorry, that was probably improper of me to say." "It was honest," Helena said, "which I appreciate." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Zachary said, "I'm Zachary Harris, though I suppose you might have heard that already. Helena Sinclair. And yes, Mrs. Jenkins mentioned you. Nothing too terrible, I hope. On the contrary, she spoke very highly of you." Helena paused, then added, "She said you take good care of your father." Something flickered in Zachary's expression, a combination of love and worry. "I try. He's not been well. The doctors say his heart is failing. There's not much they can do except make him comfortable." "I'm sorry," Helena said softly. "That must be very difficult. He's a good man, the best I know. Everything I am, I learned from him." Zachary's voice was thick with emotion. "He taught me to work hard, treat people fairly, and measure my worth by my character, not my possessions." Helena thought of William Bradford's boasts and felt a wave of respect for this cowboy and his values. Those are important lessons. They don't amount to much in the eyes of some people. Zachary said with a wry smile. My father and I have a small ranch, just the two of us and one hired hand. We run maybe 200 head of cattle. We make enough to live on, nothing more. By some standards, that makes us not worth noticing. But by the standards that matter, it makes you hardworking and independent, Helena said firmly. Zachary looked at her with surprise and something else, something that made her heart beat faster. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A banker's daughter from San Francisco. I figured you'd be like Bradford, judging everyone by their money and position. And I expected everyone in Arizona to be rough and uneducated, Helena admitted. I suppose we both had our prejudices. He laughed, a warm sound that made her smile in return. I suppose we did. The door behind them opened and Sarah Patterson poked her head out. Helena. Your father is looking for you. I should go, Helena said reluctantly. Zachary nodded. It was nice talking with you, Miss Sinclair. Please call me Helena. Only if you call me Zachary, she smiled. Good night, Zachary. As she walked back inside, she glanced over her shoulder. He was still standing there, watching her go with an expression she could not quite read. But it made her pulse quicken and her breath catch, and she knew without question that something significant had just begun. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Helena spent her mornings reading or writing letters, her afternoons visiting with the new friends she was making, and her evenings with her father. She attended church services on Sundays, where she always saw Zachary sitting with his father, an older man whose frail condition was evident even from a distance. They would exchange brief greetings after the service, always proper, always polite. But there was an awareness between them that made each encounter meaningful. She learned more about him from others in town. He was 24 years old and had been running the ranch largely on his own for the past 2 years as his father's health declined. He was known for his honesty and his skill with horses. He never drank to excess, never caused trouble, and always paid his debts on time. The town's opinion of Zachary Harris was universally positive. Helena also learned, through less charitable sources, that several young women in town had set their caps for him over the years, but he had never shown serious interest in any of them. Too focused on work, Sarah Patterson said with a sigh. Such a shame. He'd make some woman a wonderful husband. Helena tried not to think too much about that. Her father's house was completed in mid-June, and Helena threw herself into the work of making it a home. It was a good-sized house with a parlor, dining room, kitchen, and 4 bedrooms upstairs. Not as grand as their San Francisco home had been, but well-built and comfortable. She hung curtains, arranged furniture, and slowly transformed the empty rooms into something welcoming. One afternoon, as she was supervising the delivery of a new settee for the parlor, Zachary appeared with a wagon full of lumber. Your father ordered some shelving for his office, he explained. I'm supposed to install it. I didn't know you did carpentry work, Helena said, surprised. I do whatever needs doing, Zachary said with a shrug. My father taught me woodworking when I was young. I'm no master craftsman, but I can build a sturdy shelf. Helena showed him to her father's office, a small room at the back of the house. As Zachary began measuring and marking, she found herself lingering in the doorway, watching him work. His movements were efficient and confident, and she noticed again the care he took with everything he did. You can come in, you know, he said without looking up. I don't bite. Helena felt herself blush. I didn't want to disturb you. You're not. He glanced at her with a smile. Though I have to admit, it's a bit distracting having you watch me work. Should I leave? I didn't say it was a bad distraction. The air between them suddenly felt charged. Helena stepped into the room, drawn by something she did not fully understand. Can I help? Do you know how to use a hammer? No, but I could learn. He considered this, then nodded. All right, come here and I'll show you. For the next hour, Zachary taught her the basics of carpentry. He showed her how to measure precisely, how to mark straight lines, how to drive a nail without bending it. He was patient and encouraging, and when she successfully drove her first nail straight, he praised her with genuine pleasure. "You're a natural," he said. "You're a good teacher." They stood close together, both acutely aware of the other's presence. Zachary's hand brushed against hers as he reached for another nail, and the contact sent electricity through her entire body. He felt it too. She could tell by the way his breath caught, and his eyes darkened. "Helena," he said softly, and the way he said her name made her heart race. A knock at the front door shattered the moment. Helena stepped back quickly, flustered. "I should get that." It was Mrs. Jenkins from the general store, bringing fabric Helena had ordered. By the time she had dealt with that and returned to the office, the shelves were finished and Zachary was packing up his tools. "All done," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "Tell your father they should hold whatever he needs." "Thank you, Zachary. What do we owe you?" "I already settled up with your father. This was part of our agreement." He picked up his toolbox, then hesitated. "Helena, I wanted to ask you something." "Yes. There's a dance at the Patterson farm in 2 weeks. A summer celebration, nothing fancy. I was wondering if you might like to go." "With me, I mean." Helena's heart soared. "I would like that very much." Relief flooded his face. "Really? I mean good, that's good. I'll come by at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock would be perfect." After he left, Helena found herself grinning like a fool. She caught her reflection in the hall mirror and laughed at her own expression. She looked like a girl in the first flush of infatuation, and perhaps that was exactly what she was. Her father was less pleased when she told him about the dance. "Zachary Harris is a fine young man," he said carefully. "But Helena, he's a struggling rancher with no real prospects. I want you to be happy, but I also want you to be realistic about your future. We're just going to a dance, father, not planning a wedding." I know, I just worry. William Bradford has expressed interest in courting you. He comes from a good family, he has wealth and position. He could give you the life you're accustomed to. William Bradford is an arrogant fool who thinks his money makes him superior to everyone else," Helena said with more heat than she intended. "I could never respect a man like that, let alone care for him." Her father sighed. "You're right, he is rather full of himself, but there are other suitable young men. The lawyer, Morrison, or the doctor's son who is studying back east. Men with education and prospects." "Father, I appreciate your concern, but I'm only going to a dance. Please, let me have this one evening without worrying about my future." He relented, though Helena could see the worry in his eyes. She understood his perspective. He wanted her to be secure, to marry someone who could provide for her the way he had provided for her mother. But Helena was beginning to realize that security and happiness were not always the same thing. The next 2 weeks crawled by with agonizing slowness. Helena saw Zachary in town a few times, brief encounters where they exchanged pleasantries while acutely aware of the coming dance. She changed her mind about what to wear at least a dozen times, finally settling on a simple dress of pale yellow cotton that Sarah assured her was perfect. The evening of the dance, Zachary arrived exactly at 6 o'clock, driving a clean wagon with fresh paint. He had clearly made an effort with his appearance, wearing a pressed shirt and vest, his hair still damp from washing. When he saw Helena, his eyes widened with open admiration. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush with pleasure. "Thank you. You look very handsome yourself." The drive to the Patterson farm took nearly an hour, and Helena treasured every minute of it. Away from the eyes of the town, they could talk freely, and she discovered Zachary had a quick wit and a thoughtful perspective on the world. He asked about her life in San Francisco, and she told him about her education, her mother's death, and how lost she had felt in the years since. "I understand that feeling," Zachary said quietly. "When my mother died, I was 12 years old. It felt like the sun had gone out. My father was devastated, and I had to be strong for both of us. There were days I didn't think we'd make it through. But you did. We did. And we're closer for it. Losing someone you love changes you, but it doesn't have to destroy you." Helena felt tears prick her eyes. No one else had understood that feeling, the way grief both breaks and strengthens you. "Thank you for saying that." He reached over and took her hand, a gesture so natural it felt like they had been doing it for years. "I'm glad you're here, Helena. In Wickenburg, I mean. I know you probably miss San Francisco, but I'm glad fate brought you here." "So am I," she whispered. The Patterson farm was transformed for the celebration. Lanterns hung from the trees. Long tables groaned under the weight of food brought by various families, and the barn had been swept clean for dancing. It was nothing like the formal balls Helena had attended in San Francisco, but there was a warmth and genuine joy to the gathering that those stuffy affairs had lacked. Zachary introduced her to his father, Jacob Harris, who had made the trip despite his failing health. He was a thin man with kind eyes that reminded her of his son. "So you're the young lady who has my Zachary walking around with his head in the clouds," Jacob said with a warm smile. "I can see why. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Sinclair. Please call me Helena." "And the pleasure is mine, Mr. Harris." "Jacob," he insisted. "We don't stand on ceremony out here." They spent the evening dancing, eating, and talking with the other guests. Helena was accepted warmly by everyone, and she began to see the tight-knit community that existed here. These people helped each other, celebrated together, and weathered hardships as a group. It was different from the competitive, stratified society she had known in San Francisco. As the evening wore on and the air cooled, Zachary led her away from the crowd to a quiet spot near the creek that ran through the property. The stars above were brilliant in the dark sky, more than she had ever seen in the city. "It's beautiful," Helena breathed. "It's one of the things I love most about this place," Zachary said. "The sky seems bigger here, like anything is possible." They sat on a fallen log, close enough that their shoulders touched. For a while they just listened to the sounds of the night, the music drifting from the barn, the gurgle of the creek, the crickets chirping in the grass. "Helena," Zachary said finally, his voice serious, "I need to be honest with you about something." Her heart clenched. "What is it?" "I like you. More than like you, if I'm being truthful. These past weeks, getting to know you, I've found myself thinking about you all the time, looking forward to any chance I might see you." He turned to face her, his expression earnest in the moonlight. "But I need you to understand my situation. I'm not a rich man. I can't offer you fancy dresses or a big house or trips to San Francisco. My father's medical bills have taken most of our savings. The ranch is barely profitable. I work from sunup to sundown just to keep it going." Helena started to speak, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. I know your father wants better for you, and maybe he's right. Maybe you deserve someone who can give you all the things you're used to. But I have to tell you how I feel, even if it's foolish. I can't give you riches, Helena. Only my honest heart, and I'm afraid that might not be enough." The vulnerability in his voice, the raw honesty of his words, moved Helena beyond measure. She reached up and cupped his face in her hands, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "Zachary Harris, do you really think I care about money? I think you deserve to be comfortable, to be cared for properly. Then hear me when I say this. I have had comfort. I have lived in a big house with servants and fine things. and I was lonely and sad and felt like I was suffocating under the weight of all those expectations. She looked into his eyes, willing him to understand. You make me feel alive. You make me laugh. You treat me like a person, not a prize to be won or a status symbol. You are honest and kind and hardworking, and those things matter so much more to me than money ever could. Helena, he breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and questioning. She kissed him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside, and it was like coming home. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she melted into his embrace. The kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, more passionate, until they were both breathless. When they finally pulled apart, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you, he whispered. I think I have been since the moment I saw you in the general store. I'm falling in love with you too, Helena admitted. And I don't care what anyone says about it. They sat there under the stars, holding each other, and Helena knew with certainty that her life had just changed forever. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges they faced, this was real. This mattered. This was worth fighting for. The ride home that night was filled with soft conversation and stolen kisses. When they arrived at Helena's house, Zachary walked her to the door, reluctant to let her go. Can I see you tomorrow? He asked. Yes, Helena said immediately. Come for lunch, I'll cook something, he laughed. You can cook, I'm learning. Mrs. Jenkins has been teaching me. I can't promise it will be good, but it will be edible. Then I look forward to it. One more kiss, sweet and lingering, and then he was gone, driving away into the night. Helena leaned against the door, her heart full to bursting. She had not felt this happy since before her mother died, and the feeling was both exhilarating and terrifying. Her father was waiting up for her, reading in his chair by lamplight. He took one look at her face and set down his book with a sigh. That good a time, was it? Helena sat down across from him. Father, I need to tell you something. You're in love with him. Yes. I know it's fast. I know you have concerns, but he's a good man, Father. The best man I've ever met. Charles Sinclair looked at his daughter for a long moment. You look like your mother when you talk about him. She had that same light in her eyes when she spoke of me. He smiled sadly. I was poor when I met your mother. Did you know that? Working as a clerk in a shipping office, barely making enough to pay my rent. Her father was a wealthy merchant who wanted her to marry someone from their social circle. But she chose me anyway, and we built our life together from nothing. Helena felt tears sting her eyes. I didn't know that. I forgot it for a while after she died, got so caught up in work, in building wealth and security, that I forgot what really matters. Your mother would be disappointed in me, I think, trying to push you toward money instead of love. He stood and walked over to her, placing a gentle hand on her head. If Zachary Harris makes you happy, if he treats you well and you love him, then you have my blessing. Money can be made. Love is much harder to find. Helena threw her arms around her father, overwhelmed with gratitude and relief. Thank you, Father. Thank you so much. Just promise me you'll be sensible about things. Get to know him properly, take your time. I'm giving my blessing, not rushing you to the altar. I promise. Over the next months, Helena and Zachary courted properly, though everyone in town could see they were deeply in love. Helena learned to cook and keep house, skills she had never needed in San Francisco but found satisfying in their practicality. Zachary taught her to ride horses, and they spent long afternoons exploring the countryside around Wickenburg. She visited his ranch and fell in love with the small but well-maintained property. The house was modest, just 4 rooms, but it was clean and comfortable, with hand-carved furniture that Jacob had made. The land itself was beautiful, rolling hills dotted with cattle and bordered by mountains. She could picture a life here, and the thought did not frighten her as it once might have. Jacob's health continued to decline, and Helena often accompanied Zachary on his visits to town to see the doctor. She grew close to the older man, who treated her with warmth and welcomed her into their small family. "You're good for my boy," Jacob told her one afternoon. "He needs someone to share his life with, someone to remind him there's more to living than just work." "He's good for me too," Helena said honestly. "He's teaching me what really matters in life." In October, as the brutal summer heat finally began to ease, Jacob Harris passed away peacefully in his sleep. Zachary was devastated, and Helena held him through his grief, just as he had listened to her talk about her mother. They buried Jacob on a hill overlooking the ranch, and the entire town turned out for the funeral, testament to how much the older man had been respected. After the funeral, as guests were leaving, William Bradford approached Zachary with an offer. "Harris, I know times are tough. My father is interested in buying your land. He would give you a fair price, enough to start over somewhere else. Think about it." Zachary's jaw tightened. "The ranch isn't for sale. Be reasonable. How are you going to run it alone? Your father did most of the planning, the business side. You're just a cowboy. You'll run it into the ground within a year." "Get off my property, Bradford." William held up his hands in mock surrender. "Just trying to help, but when you come crawling to sell in a few months, the price will be lower." After he left, Helena took Zachary's hand. "You're not alone," she said firmly. "Whatever you need, I'm here." "Helena, I can't ask you to take this on. It's going to be hard, probably harder than anything either of us has faced. The ranch is struggling even with my father's experience. I might lose it anyway. Then we'll face that together, and if we lose the ranch, we'll figure something else out, together." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Zachary. I'm only afraid of losing you." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I love you so much. I love you too, and I want to help. Teach me about the ranch. Let me be your partner, not just someone you're protecting." So Zachary began teaching Helena about ranching. She learned to check fences, to spot sick cattle, to keep the books and manage the finances. She had a head for numbers, it turned out, and she found ways to economize that Zachary had not considered. She negotiated better prices with the suppliers in town and found a buyer in Phoenix who would pay more for their beef. Her father supported them, offering business advice when asked, but mostly staying out of their way. He could see how happy Helena was, how much she had grown and matured. This was not the delicate society girl who had arrived in Wickenburg months ago. This was a strong, capable woman who knew her own mind and followed her own heart. In December, on a cool, clear evening, Zachary took Helena back to the spot by the creek where they had first kissed. He had planned something special, and his nervousness showed in the way he kept adjusting his hat and clearing his throat. "Helena Sinclair," he finally said, dropping to one knee and pulling a small box from his pocket. "I don't have much to offer you. A struggling ranch, a modest house, and a life that will be full of hard work. But I love you with everything I am. You've made me happier than I ever thought possible, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "It was my mother's ring," he explained. "The only valuable thing my father kept. He told me before he died that he wanted you to have it if you would accept." Tears streamed down Helena's face. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you, Zachary Harris. I would marry you if you had nothing but the clothes on your back. I would marry you if we lived in a tent on bare ground, because you are everything I want, everything I need, just you." He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he stood and lifted her into his arms, spinning her around as they both laughed through their tears. When he set her down, they kissed with the passion of two people who had found their home in each other. They were married in January of 1883 at the church in Wickenburg, with the whole town in attendance. Helena wore a simple white dress that she and Sarah Patterson had sewn together, and she carried wildflowers that Zachary had ridden miles to find. Her father walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and when he placed her hand in Zachary's, he whispered, "Take care of my girl." "With my life," Zachary promised. The ceremony was beautiful, full of love and joy. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Zachary kissed her with such tenderness that Helena heard several women in the congregation sigh. They walked back up the aisle together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. The reception was held at the hotel, with food and music and dancing that lasted late into the night. William Bradford showed up uninvited and got drunk, making snide comments about Helena throwing her life away on a poor cowboy, until the sheriff finally escorted him out. But nothing could dampen Helena's happiness. She was married to the man she loved, surrounded by friends who had become family, in a place she had learned to call home. That night, in the ranch house that was now hers as well, Zachary carried her over the threshold into their bedroom. What followed was tender and passionate, an expression of the love they felt for each other that left them both breathless and amazed. Afterwards, lying in his arms, Helena felt a peace she had never known. "No regrets," Zachary murmured against her hair. "Not a single one," Helena said. "This is exactly where I'm meant to be." The first year of their marriage was hard but happy. Helena threw herself into ranch work with determination, learning every aspect of the operation. She was not afraid to get her hands dirty, to spend long days mending fences or helping with the cattle. The work was physically exhausting but deeply satisfying in a way her old life never had been. Money was tight. There were months when they were not sure they could pay their hired hand and had to let him go, taking on all the work themselves. There were times when unexpected expenses, like a sick horse or broken equipment, meant they ate simple meals and went without luxuries. But they faced each challenge together, and somehow that made even the hard times bearable. Helena's relationship with her father remained strong. Charles Sinclair was impressed by his daughter's resilience and business sense. He occasionally helped them with loans during particularly tight months, always at fair terms, and he respected their determination to make the ranch work on their own. In the spring, Helena discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and terror in equal measure. A baby would be another mouth to feed, another responsibility when they were already stretched thin. But the thought of creating a family together, of bringing new life into the world, was more wonderful than any fear. Helena worked on the ranch as long as she could, but as her pregnancy advanced, she had to step back from the more physical tasks. She focused instead on the business side, managing their accounts and finding new buyers for their cattle. She also learned to preserve food, to make clothes, and all the other skills necessary for frontier life. Zachary was attentive and worried throughout her pregnancy, constantly fussing over her health. "I'm not made of glass," Helena would tell him with a laugh when he tried to stop her from doing some perfectly reasonable task. But she was touched by his concern, by the way he would rest his hand on her growing belly and talk to their child about the ranch and the life they would build together. On a cold December night, with the doctor and Sarah Patterson in attendance, Helena gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Jacob Charles Harris, after both his grandfathers. When Zachary held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his weathered face, Helena thought her heart might burst from love. "He's perfect," Zachary whispered. "You're perfect. I'm the luckiest man alive." Jacob was a good baby, healthy and happy. Helena discovered a fierce maternal love she had not known she possessed. while also learning the exhaustion that came with caring for an infant. But Zachary was a devoted father, walking the floors with Jacob at night so Helena could sleep, changing diapers without complaint, and treating his son with a gentleness that made Helena fall in love with him all over again. As Jacob grew, the ranch slowly became more stable. They had several good years with healthy calves and fair prices. Helena's business skills helped them build a small savings cushion, and they were able to hire back some help. They made improvements to the house, adding 2 rooms and a proper kitchen. It was not luxurious, but it was comfortable and filled with love. Helena's father retired from the bank in 1885 and moved into a small house in town. He spent several days a week at the ranch, doting on his grandson and helping with whatever needed doing. The relationship between Charles and Zachary grew into a genuine friendship, built on mutual respect and their shared love for Helena. When Jacob was 3, Helena gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Claire. The girls were tiny but fierce, and their arrival turned the household wonderfully chaotic. Zachary built a larger table so the whole family could eat together, and the sound of children's laughter filled the house. Sarah Patterson married the new schoolteacher and had children of her own, so Jacob and his sisters grew up with built-in playmates. The community around them remained tight-knit and supportive, always ready to help a neighbor in need. William Bradford eventually moved to California, his father having grown tired of his arrogant attitude and poor business decisions. The Triple B Ranch was sold to a family from Texas, decent people who became friends with the Harrises. Without Bradford's antagonism, life in Wickenburg became even more peaceful. As the years passed, the ranch prospered. Not wealthy by any means, but successful enough to provide a comfortable life for their growing family. Zachary and Helena worked side by side every day, their partnership growing stronger with each passing year. They still found time to ride out to the creek where he had first kissed her, to remember those early days of falling in love and marvel at the life they had built. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Zachary gave Helena a beautiful necklace, a luxury they could finally afford. But more precious than the gift was the letter he wrote to accompany it. 10 years ago, it read, I promised you only my honest heart. I had nothing else to give, and I was afraid it would not be enough. But you took that heart and made it the foundation of a life more wonderful than I ever dreamed possible. You are my partner, my love, my everything. Every day with you is a gift. Thank you for taking a chance on a poor cowboy who had nothing but love to offer. Helena cried when she read it, then pulled him close for a kiss that still, after 10 years and 3 children, made her heart race. Your honest heart was always enough, she whispered. It was everything I ever needed. Jacob grew into a strong, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. The twins were spirited and bright, already showing signs of their mother's intelligence and their father's determination. The family attended church every Sunday, went to town dances, and hosted gatherings at the ranch for their friends and neighbors. Helena's father remained a constant presence in their lives until he passed away peacefully in 1892. Surrounded by his family. His last words to Helena were, You chose well, my dear. Your mother would be so proud. After Charles died, Helena found among his papers a letter he had written years earlier, to be opened after his death. In it, he apologized for initially doubting Zachary and praised the life his daughter had built. I spent years chasing wealth, he wrote, thinking it would bring happiness and security. But watching you and Zachary, I learned that true wealth is measured in love, family, and the honest work of building a good life. You are richer than I ever was, my darling girl, and I am grateful to have seen you so happy. Helena shared the letter with Zachary, and they both cried. That evening, sitting on their porch and watching their children play in the yard, Zachary took her hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Giving up the life you could have had?" Helena looked at him in genuine surprise. "How could I regret this? I have you, our children, a home I love, work that matters. I have everything I ever wanted, even though I did not know I wanted it when I first came here. You could have married someone like Bradford, had a big house in town, servants, fancy clothes. And I would have been miserable," Helena said firmly. "That life is empty without love. I learned that watching my father after my mother died. All his money could not fill the void she left. But this, what we have, this is real. This is what matters." She leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The sounds of their children's laughter drifted through the evening air, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed contentedly. "I love you," Zachary said softly. "More now than even when we married, which I would not have thought possible." "I love you too," Helena replied. "Thank you for asking me to that dance all those years ago. Thank you for being honest about what you could offer. Thank you for seeing past the banker's daughter to the woman who just wanted to be loved for who she was. Thank you for seeing past the poor cowboy to the man who would have given you the moon if he could figure out how to lasso it." Helena laughed, and the sound was full of joy. They had built something beautiful together, something that would last. Their children would grow up knowing they were loved, would see the example of a marriage built on respect and partnership. The ranch would be passed down to Jacob one day, a legacy of hard work and honest living. As night fell and the stars came out, brilliant in the vast Arizona sky, Helena Harris felt a contentment so deep it was almost spiritual. She had traveled far from her San Francisco upbringing, had left behind wealth and society and all the trappings of her old life. And she had found something infinitely more valuable in this dusty frontier town, in the arms of a cowboy who had nothing to offer but his honest heart. That heart had been enough. It had been everything, and she would not trade the life they had built for all the riches in the world. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. The ranch had lean years and prosperous ones, but the Harrises weathered them all together. Jacob grew into a young man who combined his father's integrity with his mother's head for business. He fell in love with the sheriff's daughter, a spirited young woman named Mary, and Zachary and Helena watched with joy as their son started his own family. The twins, Emma and Claire, grew to be accomplished women in their own right. Emma became a teacher, taking over the schoolhouse when Miss Webster retired, while Claire married a rancher from a neighboring county. Both girls remained close to their parents, their families gathering often at the ranch for holidays and celebrations. Helena never stopped being grateful for the choice she had made all those years ago. When she caught sight of Zachary across a crowded room, her heart still skipped a beat. When he held her at night, she still felt the same sense of safety and love that she had felt on their wedding night. Their passion had matured into something deeper, richer, but no less intense. She thought sometimes about the girls she had known in San Francisco, the ones who had married for position and wealth. She wondered if they had found happiness, or if they were trapped in cold marriages with men who valued their social connections more than their hearts. She hoped they had found love, but she knew how rare it was, how lucky she had been to find it in such an unexpected place. On a spring morning in 1905, Helena woke before dawn as she had for over 20 years. She dressed quietly and went to the kitchen to start coffee, a routine so familiar it required no thought. Through the window, she could see Zachary already up and heading to the barn, his movements still graceful despite the years and the hard work that had weathered his body. She poured 2 cups of coffee and went out to meet him, stepping carefully across the yard in the pre-dawn light. He smiled when he saw her coming, that same smile that had captured her heart so long ago. "Morning, beautiful," he said, taking the coffee gratefully. "Morning, handsome." They stood together watching the sun rise over the mountains, the land they had worked and loved spread out before them. The house Jacob and Mary had built sat on a rise to the north, smoke already rising from its chimney. In the other direction, they could see the lights of town growing as Wickenburg slowly expanded. "We did all right, didn't we?" Zachary said softly. Helena leaned against him, fitting perfectly under his arm as she always had. "We did better than all right. We did wonderfully." No regrets. It was a question he still asked sometimes, as though he could not quite believe she had chosen him and never looked back. Helena stood on her toes and kissed him, putting all her love and certainty into it. "Not one single regret," she said when they parted. "You gave me your honest heart, and it was the greatest gift I ever received. Everything good in my life came from that." His arms tightened around her. "I was so scared that day, telling you I had nothing to offer but my heart. I thought for sure you would realize you could do better and walk away. Your heart was everything, Zachary. It still is." She pulled back to look into his eyes, wanting him to see the truth in hers. "You taught me what really matters in life. Not money or position or social standing, but love and integrity and the satisfaction of building something real with your own hands. You gave me a life with purpose, a partnership where I was valued for who I am, not what I represent. You gave me children and a home and a love that has only grown stronger with time. How could anything be better than that?" They stood there in the growing light, 2 people who had taken a chance on love and built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. The work had been hard, the challenges real, but they had faced everything together and emerged stronger for it. As the sun crested the mountains and bathed the ranch in golden light, Helena thought about the frightened girl who had stepped off that stagecoach in Wickenburg all those years ago. That girl had been searching for something without knowing what it was. She had found it in a dusty frontier town, in the honest heart of a cowboy who had dared to love her despite having nothing else to offer. And it turned out that honest heart was worth more than all the riches in the world. It was worth everything. The end.